Thank you all so much for inviting me today. For those of you who I do not know, my name is Jason Smith, and I represent the 8th District of Missouri. It's one of the poorest congressional districts in the nation, but it's also one of the most conservative. I grew up in a working class family. My dad was an auto mechanic and preacher, and my mom was a factory worker, so our family could afford health care. That should tell you a lot about what the Republican Party looks like today. It's the party of the working class. You know, our next vice president, J.D. Vance, he describes himself as a hillbilly from Appalachia. So I am a hillbilly from the Ozark Mountains in Missouri. It's a complete pleasure to be with you all here tonight. When President Trump left office just under 4 years ago, the alliance and partnership between the United States and Israel was stronger than ever before. American foreign policy under President Trump projected strength. That strength and the respect it commanded around the world kept our enemies in check and kept our allies safe. The Trump administration fulfilled its commitment to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. The eternal and indivisible capital of the Jewish state. The historic Abraham Accords, negotiated by the Trump administration, strengthened Israel's partnership with its Arab neighbors and sent a message to Iran that Israel and the Jewish people do not stand alone. On the Biden-Harris administration's watch, Iran and its proxies, like Hamas and Hezbollah, have been emboldened, and we have seen the terrifying consequences. It has been nearly a year since the horrific terrorist attacks of October 7th. That attack was an atrocity that should have never occurred, but it is underlined the fact that it is more important than ever for the United States to not waver in our support for our greatest ally in the Middle East as Israel fights to defend itself and seek justice. Here at home, Americans have been reminded that Israel's security cannot be taken for granted. But we've also seen those sinister forces from October 7th take root in our institutions. A pervasive culture of antisemitism within the Democrat Party and on college campuses across the country. For almost a year, the Ways and Means Committee has been investigating this rise in antisemitism at tax-exempt universities. It is clear the problems at some of these so-called elite schools are systematic, and this investigation was long overdue. The generous benefits these universities receive under the U.S. tax code are not a blank check. In exchange, Congress and the American people, they demand school administrators take strong, decisive action to ensure a safe learning environment for their students, or risk losing those tax benefits. And that clearly means protecting Jewish students from harassment and violence. As a new semester begins, these schools must show Congress, and more importantly, Jewish students, that they are willing to stand up to anti-Semitic hatred. I, for one, will not stop putting pressure on these schools until every Jewish student on an American university campus feels safe and is safe from threats of violence and harassment. Sadly, our investigation has uncovered that incompetent administrators and failed leadership of these universities are only half the problem. The violence and hatred directed at Jewish Americans is not some organic uprising. Tax-exempt organizations within the United States are actively engaged in an organized effort to abuse the trust and generosity of U.S. taxpayers and funnel resources towards anti-Semitism, violent protest, and terror-aligned organizations. I can promise you one thing. As the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, which, as you probably know, has sole jurisdiction over U.S. tax policy, I will not stand for this abuse of our tax code. American taxpayers will not be tricked into subsidizing anti-Semitic and anti-American protest on college campuses. Nor will they abide by such support for evil terrorist organizations like Hamas. They say sunlight is the best disinfectant. That's because sunlight also applies heat, which is what our committee has been doing to college administrators for the last year. I have put American universities on notice, and if the Biden-Harris administration continues to appease the pro-Hamas left within their party by refusing to act on our request to revoke the tax-exempt status of any organization funding any violent protest, I know that a Trump-Vance administration will. The Republican Party stands squarely behind Israel and the Jewish people around the world, and remember, it always will. Thank you.